Again. Hello, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to Voices from the Liminal. This is a space where we meet at the threshold between the seen and the unseen, the academic and the intuitive, the ancient and the lived. And this is the book that we will be talking about today, along with the wonderful author, Tracy Nicholas. Tracy is a folklore researcher, creator, storyteller whose work lives in the intersection of folklore, mindful living, and creativity. Tracy is an animist, meaning her spiritual practice is rooted in the understanding that natural world is alive, aware, and deeply interconnected. I love that. Her work invites us to not only learn folklore, but to actually live it, to bring it off the page and into our everyday lives. She is also the host of the podcast Folkloring, where she explores practical folklore in a way that is accessible, grounded, and deeply meaningful. Beyond that, she works in theater and film, contributes to the Folklore podcast, and even designs immersive escape room style experiences. That sounds amazing. I think that's absolutely incredible that you do that. Her academic background includes a degree in stage management from Columbia College and a master's of science in learning and organizational change from Northwestern University. That's in Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the town just north of Chicago.
Okay.
It's called Evanston.
Oh, very cool.
There is a branch downtown too.
Oh, lovely. So today we're not just talking about folklore, but we're talking about how it lives, how it shapes us, and how we can begin to reconnect with it in a way that feels real, embodied, and present. So settle in, everyone, get cozy, and let's step into the liminal together. So again, Tracy, thank you for being here. Thank you for this amazing book. I devoured this book. I had it first in a PDF version back in late December and read that. And then I was happy to get a physical copy in my hand. I'm more of a tactile person. I like having physical books in my hands, not like the PDF version. I'm a page flipper. I like to feel what the spine's doing. I'm that type of person. So when I physically got the book again, I reread it again because it was a different experience. And I loved it even more after rereading it again. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I'm right there with you on having a physical book. The biggest compliment you can get from me is if I highlight your book.
Oh, see, I'm afraid to highlight people's books. I mean, not that it's people's anymore, because now it's my copy. Like I don't doggy ear the pages or anything. I'll put like little post-it notes, but I think highlighting, I think I will eventually get there.
Yeah, I do have this little twinge if it's a hardcover book for whatever reason. Like paperbacks, I'm like, sure, no problem. But yeah, I do. I love sort of being like that really connected with me, and I want to remember that. And it's great to go back and like look at the book and go, oh yes, I remember this spot.
Mm-hmm.
And you go right to the things that really, you connect with.
Yeah, so for me, it's multiple bookmarks that are actually either oracle or tarot cards. Mm-hmm. Like, you know how you get like the extra cards in the Los Scarabeo deck? There's like an extra 2 cards in it. I put those aside, and then those eventually become my bookmarks.
Yeah, I tend to do the tabs, like the sign here kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I was devastated when I realized I was using it for my research. So I'd have all these pages tabbed and be like, I want to use this and everything. And I had a color coding system, so I knew which chapter it was for. And it went on for a while because it took me a while to write the book. And then when I started to go pull them off later, it left a little sticky bit. And then I was like,
oh.
I'm out here, highlighting my books, but that somehow was a bridge too far for me. So I'm rubbing it with my thumb, trying to get it off.
Yeah, I think that would probably break my heart even more than the highlighting. Like, I think I would probably highlight over using a sticky tab and then having that residue stuck on your page, because then your pages stick together and then it feels different, that page, and picks up dirt or whatever happens, you know?
Yeah, I got
Oh,
it all off. Don't worry. I got it.
good. Yeah, that breaks my heart completely, but I completely understand when it comes to that. So we're going to say hi to a couple people who are in the chat. We have my co-host, my Thursday co-host, Bobby Wild Raven Tarot. Thank you for being here. We have Aries Witchcraft, Courtney. Thank you, my dear sister. We have Craggy Brook Witchery, Lori. Thank you for being here. Uh-oh, is there feedback going on? Do you hear feedback?
Do I?
No?
No.
Yeah, okay. We have Draven. Hey, Draven, thank you for being here. We have Faye, oops, sorry, Faye of the Forest. Oops, chat's moving and it's taking my things off. There we go. Hi, Faye. Thank you for being here. We have Heather from By Brushbone Indigo Ash. Thank you for being here, Heather. We have Timmy from Raven Tarot Meditation. Hey, Timmy. We have Eternal Darkness 1643. Thank you for being here. And there's a lot of chatting going on here. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all. Okay, so the first question, Tracy. For those who may be discovering your work for the first time, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the path that led you to writing Mind Over Magic, or more about the path that led you to writing Mind Over Magic?
Sure. So my name is Tracy Nicholas, and I've been a practitioner for more than 40 years. I'm currently in a coven. I was initiated last summer. And so we have regular ritual. I'm going to one tomorrow night, as a matter of fact.
How
I'm also,
fun.
yeah, I'm taking a class in advanced magic with that same group in my coven. And I have always been interested in folklore and magic and why we believe the things that we believe about magical ideas. And I think that it's really fascinating because, you know, there are two sort of sides of value to magic, the work that you're doing, but also how it affects you and your thinking. And so I've always been fascinated in the topic. And I will tell you, there were so few books that I had to felt like I had to get to properly research this book because I just had them all already. And so it's just one of those things that it all kind of started coming together. And I'm a curious person. I like to learn. I get bored if I've mastered something and I keep doing it. So I have to move on to the next thing. And I also have a business background. I was in corporate America for, 25 years. And I think that in that part of my life, it was less magical, mostly because, I had a big old full-time job and I worked from 7 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night. But I was very interested in learning about business practices. So I got a lot of those sort of business improvement, and those contain a lot of psychology. So I sort of built that bridge between the magical side of me and this much more businessy side. And I then, of course, I have my master's, and that's in, as you said, strategic organizational change. Well, that's out of the School of Learning at Northwestern. And so there was a lot of classes that I took that were really about the psychology of change and the psychology of management. And so all of that kind of came together, and I went, I want to bring all of my experience to this book. And so that's why I included those aspects of it, because I think that obviously there are skeptics, right? And there are true believers. And so skeptics are like, none of this is real. True believers are, it's all real. I think most of us are somewhere along that spectrum, right?
And you mentioned that about being a skeptic and a believer in the book. And so secondly, I also want to point out, I'm also working towards my master's right now, MBA. So to me, when I'm thinking about my college degree, I'm finishing up my bachelor's right now. I was like, how is this going to relate to my witchcraft, my practice? Because right now it's so hard to actually practice as much as I want to because I have YouTube, I have work, I have school. So it's been really difficult to manage that. But now that you're talking about that, it's making me feel like it's actually going to go really well together, hand in hand.
Yeah, what I found, and there was a time where I was like, if I ever do need to go back into corporate America, they're going to think I'm crazy, right? And so I thought about not using my real name and using a pen name.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to people about these ideas, colleagues of mine that I was
Hmm.
friends with, like friendly enough to still go out to lunch with, right? And so I started rolling out these ideas. And literally everyone was like, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about." Like no one thought it was super
Really?
weird. Yeah, it
I
was
love
just,
that.
yeah. And those are obviously people who I was friendly with, so they liked
Hmm.
me. But they all said, "Yeah, I've had this experience," or I have seen a ghost, or and they just talked about it like it was such a natural thing to say. And so I don't know that you're really going to have a problem in that area because people
That
are much
makes me feel better.
yeah, people are much more open to these ideas if you don't talk about them in super witchy ways,
Yeah.
right?
More like a paranormal way, perhaps, maybe, or like an energy. Where I work now, I work for a hospital system and I work from home, so I'm really happy with that. But my boss and a lot of my coworkers are very open to this.
Hmm.
They know I have a YouTube channel, they know I review decks and books and all that fun stuff. So they know who I am, they know what I do, and none of them has ever seen me in a different way or treated me differently because of what I believe in.
I think that when you're working with life and death and aging and that kind of thing, it does open you up a lot more
Yeah.
because you see things that you can't really explain. But then we don't talk about those things because it's weird. One
Yeah.
of the members of my coven is a minister, a pagan minister at a hospital.
Wow. And that's not the, I mean, that's really cool that they have a pagan minister because my hospital system was a Christian Catholic hospital system, and even now my college is a Christian college. So I have to be careful what I do write in my papers.
Well, the thing about Christianity is there's so much magic in it.
Yeah, there is.
And so I think that, and there's a lot that people go and they get communion, right?
Mhm.
And there are many that believe it really is turning into the blood and the flesh, right?
Yep, that's
Um,
right.
Zombie vampire cult for me, but that's their belief, and that's fine. But I think that look at the Book of Psalms, right?
Mhm.
That's a spell book, like
It is the whole thing.
yeah, straight
I
up.
mean,
That's
hoodoo practitioners and voodoo practitioners use Psalms for their practice.
Yeah. And so I think that for people who think, oh, paganism is weird or evil or whatever, it's a matter of meeting them where they are. You can talk about
Hmm.
magic. It's just you have to understand that if you say, I'm going to go home and do a spell tonight, they don't understand that that is the same thing as making a prayer, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think about it when I think about people who talk about God and Jesus, right? I'll give you an example or a metaphor. Anyway, so I have a brother, right? My brother's name is
Mhm.
John, and I call him John. I called him Johnny when he was little. But he's got a family. And so he's got 3 kids, and they call him Dad, right? And the fact that they do that doesn't affect me and what I call him or my relationship with him. They have a different relationship than I do. It doesn't impact me in any way. I know who they're talking about. I'm not like, who is this dad that you speak of, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I think about talking about religious stuff. I don't care that you call him Jesus. I don't care that you call her God,
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't care if you say it's, you know, the universal energy. It doesn't matter to me. I know what you're talking about. And so I don't worry too much. I like to make people feel comfortable talking about it. So I don't need to push my agenda with what, you know, my phrases are. I know what it is. Words are just shortcuts to concepts and ideas. So I'm fine with that.
Perfectly said. Thank you. I think I will probably use that analogy from now on. If anyone has a question or a way of thinking about it, I will use that same analogy because that's something that everyone can understand. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, not Christian. If I give that same analogy, they're going to understand what I'm saying and why my viewpoint can be different from your viewpoint or their son's viewpoint or whomever. Yeah, perfect. Perfectly said. Yeah. See, source, the sun, plasma, it's all the same.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. So your work definitely sits at a very interesting intersection between folklore, psychology, and everyday magical thinking. What first sparked your fascination with those overlapping words or worlds? Because they are very much overlapping, but at the same time, they also have, they can be combined together.
Right. Well, and a lot of magic is folklore. And I think that it was just where it all came together for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love folklore. I love podcasting about folklore. I think it's really interesting. When I started on the Folklore podcast, and I'm the theater and film correspondent for that. And so I sort of learned how to, you know, like interview people. And I had found the Folklore podcast because I was doing research for one of my games. So I have a series based on folklore. And when I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was talking to her about her business, and I was like, I'll help you with your strategy because I've got a degree in it and all. And so we were talking, and we both at one point said, oh, hey, I really wish I had a podcast, but it feels like too much alone. And we went, oh, we should do a podcast together. And
Nice.
her work is about sort of folk craft, traditional crafts, all of those kinds of things. But we started folkloring, and when we looked, there were two kinds of folklore podcasts. One was telling stories. People tell traditional stories, and there's a lot of that. The other was sort of this, you know, intellectual exercise about here's the history, here's an expert in this and that. And I went, there's nothing that is having people interact with folklore. It's all just being talked at. And I
Mm-hmm.
do something different, and especially with her work. So that's kind of where I got the folklore part of it. And I had the book in me, and it brought together the psychology and the history of what people believed. Because again, we tell stories about what's important to us. So what people believe
Yeah.
is what I want to be looking at, because that matters. And then
And you do mention, yeah, I mean, you do mention like the Renaissance period, scientific revolution, Enlightenment, and Romanticism, occultism in the when man and magic diverged. And I particularly love that section. Actually, I loved all of these chapters, but that one for me, when I first saw that and was sent to me for review, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing because I love those time periods. I love how stuff was gradually changing magically in that time frame, in those periods, and I could relate to it, especially with some like past lives that I went into and saw that I was in those periods and how women were treated differently because of the magic, or men were treated, and so forth. So to me, the history aspect that you included in here really drew me in.
Yeah, it seemed important to include because you hear so much misinformation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is an ancient practice. It's like, no, a couple of British dudes in the 50s made up the wheel of the year, right? That is
Yeah,
not an ancient practice.
yeah.
But it's based on some ancient practices, at least four of them are, not all eight, but that's another story. But anyway, so people are believing stuff that isn't useful or helping them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted, and it was a really hard chapter to write because I mean those were big periods with a lot of stuff
Yes.
happening. And I was like, how do I make this succinct so people can understand where the beliefs were over time that got us
Yeah.
to here? Because I think that people just, in a lot of ways, they don't know and they don't understand sort of the socioeconomic impacts that culture has on magic.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that it took you a while to write this book. What made you realize you wanted to write this book? And how long was that while? Because I know you talked about the sticky notes.
Well, it took about a year to get to the first draft. If you don't include the year I was thinking about it before I even started researching.
Yeah.
but I got that in a year, and then it took another 14 months to go through the editing process and all the artwork and all of that, and start to promote it and everything. So yeah, it feels like a big chunk of my life.
Speaking of the artwork, I absolutely love the artwork in here. I mean, look at that. Look at that artwork. It's like a baby on a stairs. First, I thought it was a crib, but then I realized it was stairs. And then you have like the family. To me, I see it as a ghost, or could be like family. They're watching the child, making sure he doesn't go down the steps.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
It is okay. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful art in here that I
Yeah.
absolutely loved.
So like that one there that you just showed, that is an actual woodcut of a prophetess named Mother Shipton. And so I have a mix in the book of much older woodcut. I really like that style. But the other one you showed was an artist that created it, that works for my publisher. And so, because you're not getting a woodcut of a platypus, which I do have in there. Like that's an older one.
Yeah. Oh, these are great. I love these old pictures, old images. I think they definitely bring you back into when you're reading this book and looking through this book, and then you come across these images. It makes you stop and kind of remember what time period you're in, and think about put your mind, or put yourself in the mindset of people in the revolutionary time frame or the Renaissance time frame. It really does bring you back.
Yeah, I think that the reason I wanted to do a combination of older ones and newer ones is because with both folklore and magic, a lot of people think, oh, it's like older stories, it's older practices. And it's like, no, man, our magic is evolving now. There are people out there practicing, and they're doing new combinations of herbs, or they're using their personal experiences to say, I'm going to use a red feather because this ties me back to my mom who collected, cardinal figurines, or whatever it is.
I love that, because I do that.
Yeah. And we're creating new stories all the time. Like that's what urban legends are. That's just modern folklore. That's what, UFO stuff is. Although, like, obviously that's—
I love that. I love the UFO stuff.
Cryptids are modern folklore. And so we're making it up.
I'm wearing a cryptid shirt.
Very nice.
Yeah. So to me, that's fascinating. To me, it's magic. To me, it's science, all of that stuff. And it's something that constantly draws me in.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why I went that direction with the illustrations, because I wanted to be whimsical about it, but I also wanted people to remember that it is a combination of, because don't just, everything is made up, of course, because there was a time before people, but I'm not saying don't study what other people have done and just make everything up yourself about your personal experience. It's like cooking, right? You start, you don't know how to do it, so you get a recipe and you follow the recipe. And then once you've learned some techniques and different recipes that you like, then you can break the rules.
I'm a rule breaker. My mom gave me her Mexican rice recipe. Being Mexican, it was Mexican rice. I made it her way, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like it's missing something, in my opinion. And I never told her that, but I went ahead and changed and added stuff. And since then, family functions, Selena, can you make the rice, please? Because mine was better than my mom's.
Yep.
But that's because I changed it and made it my own. The same way with spells now. There was a spell for healing my dog. She had just had surgery, and I didn't have the ingredients or the herbs that were needed, but I'm like, wait a minute, it's the intention that I'm going to put into it. Let me start pulling out my own herbs and see which ones I feel could help her. And it worked just fine.
Well,
She
throughout the history of magic, people used what they had on hand. You couldn't go down to your local
Yeah,
witch shop and get, exotic herbs. So you used
yeah,
what, and that connects you to the land around you. It connects you
yeah,
to your, what you
yeah,
have going on. And so I think that there is, a long, proud tradition of using what's available. And there are a lot of people who, unlike you and I, are still in the broom closet.
yeah.
And so, a cup can be your chalice, right? You can
Mhm.
use a knife that you put aside to use it as your athame. You don't have to have a witchy aesthetic in order to, you use what you have,
Yeah.
right? And so, and again, if you don't like my altar, I don't think I've ever had anyone, well, I've got 5 altars, but a little more obvious now. I've got my main altar, my business altar, my kitchen altar, my
Yeah.
ancestor altar, right there,
One,
um,
two, three. I
and
have 5 altars as well.
my deity altar.
Yeah.
And so my deity altar is a little more obvious because I've got a statue of Hecate and one of Pan. And I've, leave offerings. But my main altar, no one has ever once said, oh, what, it's just like it's decor. Because I don't have a bunch of super witchy stuff on it. And it's in my front room, and it's where most of the, people who are not good friends of mine are, coming in. And so that's just, I think you can do it any way you want. But again, learn the
Yeah.
rules and then break them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think learning the rules, which I did, but then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have these specific herbs that Madame Pomito is asking for in her book. So I was like, I'm going to improvise and use what I have. And I just randomly, intuitively started grabbing herbs. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me see if these go well together. And I looked everything up and did my research, and it did. It was perfect. So within an hour, she was laying at my feet and happy and rolling
Yes.
over on her back. So that to me told me that it worked.
Yeah. And I think that symbolism is important. In some
Mhm.
parts of the world, money isn't green.
Yeah.
So you're not going to pull a green crystal to help you
Yeah.
in your abundance spell, right? And I think some places black cats are lucky, um,
Yeah.
especially in my home. I'm very lucky.
Very, very lucky. Yes. I love that. So this book definitely is asking powerful questions like, how do we know if magic is real? What inspired you to approach that topic from the perspective? Because we do come across a lot of skeptics who say magic is not real. Oh, that's just what happened. They don't really see it as magic. So how do
Yeah,
you approach that topic?
I think that it's very interesting because some magical things we sort of think are okay, right? Like we were talking about communion. Nobody's like, that's
Hmm.
so weird, right? People
Yeah.
talk about intuition all the time. It's like, I'm sorry, you had a feeling that something was going to happen in the future and you acted upon that
Yeah.
and it did. Like, how is that not magical? You're telling the future. And
Yeah.
so I think that skeptics are focused on the more fantastical stories about magic. And so they're just like, oh, that's all silly. But then when you look at something like intuition, right? Everyone's like, yeah, that's a thing. And
Hmm.
so I wanted to kind of pick that apart and be like, what are other things that we can look at and say, this is real and we know it and there's evidence of it. And that's why I went down the path of looking strongly at energy work and how
Hmm.
our energy works and how we connect to other people. So I think that was where it brought me was, and I did sort of write it with skeptics in mind, although it's great for anybody questioning any of their spirituality. But I thought, I'm not going to go down the path of things we can't prove, right? And my best example for that is spirits, ghosts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
You
there's a lot
can't.
of people, yeah, there's a lot of people out there trying, and they're doing their electrical, and they've got those, what are they, ghosts?
Spirit boxes and
Boxes.
yeah, EMF readers and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. They don't really know what they're reading. And those spirit boxes are hilarious because, they'll be like, "Oh, you heard it? It just said my name." It was like, "Wow, I hope you warmed up because that was a stretch."
I love it.
But I think that the reason that we can't prove it right now, and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
someday we will be able to, because I believe I have myself met a ghost. But the reason we can't prove it is that we don't have a good understanding of how consciousness works, right? We don't know how it works. We don't know how anesthesia works. Like what mechanism, we know that it does work, and we
Yeah.
know
I could tell you what drugs it is because I'm in pharmacy
yeah,
and I've had them mix them myself.
but we don't know how it works in the brain. And if we
No.
don't understand what consciousness is, I don't think that we can prove if consciousness can continue past death. And until we can figure that out and prove it, I think that, it's all going to be anecdotal tales. And
Yeah.
like I said, I hope that science does come. And I hope that people do figure that out, because that would be amazing to know. Because again, we tell stories about what is important to us. And throughout time, in every culture, you see stories about ghosts and ancestors and spirits. So those things are really important to people, and not just in an abstract way. It helps them deal with things like grief. So I think that I would love for that to be proven.
So I think this would be a really good book for someone who is a skeptic.
Yeah. Yeah.
For them to actually read this, go through it, and then for them to, because you are on the borderline of a skeptic mindset, you want people to really question energy, question magic, but because we believe in it, I feel like we almost have a different viewpoint of it.
Oh no, I'm a true believer.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's just much more accessible to most people than they realize, because they're telling stories in their heads about what they think magic is. And when I look at the energy work, like where I start is with the placebo effect. And I know you're going to ask me about it later, but I'm there.
That's fine.
Okay, so you take a pill and it is
Mhm.
inert, right? And your brain says, "Oh, we've taken medicine that is going to
Yeah.
rest." And so your brain just says, "Okay, I'll cure you now." Right?
Yeah.
But here's the super interesting thing about placebo effects. They work even if you know it is a placebo. Now, it doesn't work quite as well, but it still works. And what that says to me, I'm bringing it back around.
Mind over magic.
Yeah.
Mind over matter.
What it says to me is ritual is super important, because even as small of a ritual as taking a pill, your brain goes, taking pills are what make me better.
Yep.
At least in part, right? And so that ritual is so important. So I think doing ritual is important for a couple of reasons. One is that it tells your brain, hey, this is going to be something important, and you are going to have energy affecting the world around you, right? And the other is it puts you in the right mindset, because I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm going to manifest. It's like, okay, but if you do an abundance spell, or you do your vision board, or you do whatever it is that you're going to manifest, and then you just sit in your house watching Netflix, well, that money's not coming, right? That's
Nope.
how it works. And
You have to actively do something to help it manifest.
And part of being able to actively do something is that mindset shift that ritual can give you. And so it is all about the mindset, and you be like, yes, I know this is coming. Now I can, do that, record that video, or write that post, or whatever it is that you're doing.
Even if it's lighting one candle a day, thinking about your intention, your manifestation, even for the time that candle is burning, even a tea light, a birthday candle, it doesn't matter. You are putting your mind into actively making this happen, actively come to you. And I think that's the important part that people forget. When people, talk about gratitude and I practice a gratitude mindset every day and journaling, and there's an abundance that continuously comes my way because of my mindset.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the other thing is, when you're telling yourself stories, we all tell ourselves stories all the time. If you tell yourself a story like, I don't have good intuition, like I never,
Yeah.
then then we get to confirmation bias, and you start
Yeah.
to look for evidence of that, and you start to see more evidence
Yep.
of that. If you can change that story, you can examine your stories and say, where do I have stories that don't serve me to reach my greatest good, right? You can say, okay, maybe instead I will tell this story. I can get better with my intuition. And then you're out there going, well, let me pay attention to what's happening. And maybe there's things I'm not noticing that
Hmm.
tell us a different story. So if you can really dig down and look at those stories that are holding you back, that are non-productive for you, try telling a different story. And if you can't, if you say, nope, I am 100% convinced my intuition is terrible, then you can say, okay, if that were true, what is it that I can do about that?
Hmm.
I study with someone. Can I read more about intuition? Can I learn something? Can I practice? Right? Because magic is a practice, right?
Practice. Hmm.
And so I think that if you can start asking those questions, then you can still make those shifts.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Energy flows where the attention goes. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually, that's beautifully said. So, did your own understanding of magic actually change when you were writing this book? And I felt like you have something else to add to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing about that last comment.
Hmm.
There is like some skiers when they're out skiing, right? They decide that as opposed to going down the regular slopes, they're going to go through the trees. And the reason they do this is because the regular slopes, the snow gets packed down and all of that. And so they want this pristine snow. And there are some people who are very successful in not smacking into trees. And what they tell people who are starting out doing this is you look for the gaps, right? And the people who
Hmm.
are looking for trees to avoid end up hitting those a lot more often. So absolutely, where your attention is, that's where
Yeah.
you're going to go. So I think that was a great comment.
Yeah. Nicely said, Amber. Thank you so much. Um, so, did your own understanding of magic change after writing this book?
I don't think it changed as much as it sort of refined, um, because I just understood so much more
Hmm.
about how it works in the physical world. I think it took away a lot of my imposter syndrome. And because it's like, well, yeah, now I get how it works. If you didn't understand how to like seed clouds, right? And
Hmm.
make the rain come, then a rain dance would be, your go-to. But once you understand better, you go, oh, there's a better method for it because I know how it works now. So, and I did learn, it was interesting because part of what took me a year to write it was I would learn new things, right? I was midway through writing it when someone said, "Oh, you should really pick up the book Morphogenic Resonance by Rupert Sheldrake." And I was like, "What is that?" And then it became like central to a lot of what I was doing. So I think I advanced it and refined it more than changed it.
Oh, nice. I love that. Um, do you think magic is something external in the universe or something that emerges through human consciousness and perception?
Well, I think that, the concept of magic comes through human consciousness, but
Hmm.
I believe that, as I've proven in multiple places in the book, there are really things out there happening. There are real physical things that are out there happening. And
Hmm.
it's not, the science is not new in many cases. Like when I talk about quantum entanglement and I compare it to energetic cords. A quantum entanglement is where you have an actual physical connection on the quantum level between other people that you interact with and other animals and plants and objects and everything. And when people talk about cord cutting, they're looking at the symbolism of it, but that's a very real thing. There are cords, and we know it, and we've got studies about quantum pseudo telepathy that tell us that those connections allow us to sort of have more information about the other person. It's how people know, like, someone tragically dies and they know in the instant that they're connected. And the symbolism is great, because the symbolism, again, is a ritual that helps the brain move forward with breaking those attachments. And if you add the science to it, which the science tells us that there's only so much of that that we can actually attach to all of the time. If you start strengthening your attachments that are not that person that you want to cut the cord with, then you can sort of weaken those attachments. And so we have the magic, the symbolism, our brain working through the symbolism and ritual. And we also have a practical, in the real world, in the mundane world, thing to do in order to weaken that. And that's why people sort of, it's really hard at first with a breakup, but then over time, it's easier and easier, and you sort of forget. That's those entanglements going away.
I love that. So one of the sections that really stood out to me was the discussion, like you just said, about the placebo effect. I think we already just talked about that, because you talked about the placebo effect and you said, I'm going to get ahead. And that's where I was at. And I'm reading it. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so the book also talks about human exchange emotions and energetic states with each other. Why do you think shared experiences like concerts, rituals, or gatherings amplify energy so strongly?
Well, I think for a number of reasons. And that is a good sort of next step after the placebo effect. The placebo effect only is proving what happens in your body. And so we want to know if your magic works outside of you and it's not just sort of a biological function. And I think that concerts are so cool, because this is, again, another magical thing that people act like is totally normal, and they will talk about it like, oh, the energy was so amazing, right? And it comes from a number of things. I think it comes from the music or the performance that is just, really hitting right. And it can come from percussion. It can come from a shared experience. And so our bodies are at a certain vibrational level when we're healthy. And we vibrate between about 7 hertz and 20 hertz, right? And you kind of, the sweet spot's kind of in the middle there, because if you get too far out of that range, you start to get things like anxiety, insomnia. And if you get too low, you start to get exhaustion, depression, right? So being in the middle of that. And so when we're in a concert situation and we know we have a vibrational field around us, we absolutely know that. We have tested that. And so we're sharing those vibrational fields, and vibrational fields will sort of pull you toward whatever it is that, whatever that level is. So, for example, electronics pull our vibration up. And so that's when people start to get anxious and nervous. If we go out in nature, we know that it pulls our vibration down, because nature has a lower vibration. Electronics have a higher vibration. So we know that these vibrations affect where we're at and what our mood and emotion. And when we're in a concert situation, we all know, we've had that experience, right? We've also had the experience where it falls flat and you're like, eh. And I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, theater people are some of the most superstitious people out there. And I was a stage manager for 10 years, and they will be like, what's the energy in the room like?
Yes, what's the energy?
Yeah, and we all know it. We know that experience. So I think that one is just a lived experience that we can all say, yeah, I know how that feels. And so once you understand that, yes, we do exchange energy through these vibrations, which are essentially oscillations within our cells of atoms. And once we understand that we do know what these vibrations are, then we can start to pay attention. And what I mean by pay attention is figure out what your sort of baseline feeling good energy is. And you don't always want to be high energy. People are always like, raise your energy, raise
Oh
your
my
energy.
goodness, no. I
No.
can't be around people like that because it's too overwhelming. You know, I pick
Yeah.
up on their energy and it's like, no, I can't. I can't physically deal with this.
Yeah, it's akin in my mind to like toxic positivity,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to be super high energy when I'm going to bed.
No.
You know, I'm happy being a low. That's one of the reasons they say turn off your electronics before bed. It's,
Yeah.
the light hitting your eyes affects it, but it's also affecting your vibration. And so once you understand what your feeling is, what your energy feels like, then you can start to do things like say, I'm going to pay attention to how people make me feel when I'm around them. And then, you can do things like grounding, centering, shielding, saying that is not my energy.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, back to the practice. You have to practice and figure it out, or you're always going to be pulled by other people's energy. And so, practice, practice, practice.
So I've been to a concert, Highling. Theirs is like actually they're from Europe. They're a European group. They actually start off with a ritual when they're doing a concert. The energy there is magnetic. When you hear their music, when you're in that concert venue,
Mhm.
you're like nonstop dancing, everything swaying, whatever it is you call dancing, you're constantly doing it because of the energy that's happening around you, but also the people that you're with. If they have high energy and they're excited about the band and they're naturally high energy people, you're picking up on that. And then you're also mirroring their mood, their energy.
Well, it's interesting because I actually interviewed Einar Selvik, who's the head of that band.
I
And
love it.
yeah, we're on the Folklore podcast.
Yeah. Oh my
But
goodness, I love that because they came to Pittsburgh. The lead singer and I'm older by exactly one day.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, Einar he's a great guy. I talked to him for a couple of hours, and I like so mellow, so mellow. He's like,
Really?
yeah, he is not like a high energy person at all. He's just like, yeah. I remember I asked him like, so what do you do besides the music? And because he builds a lot of the instruments because they're
Yeah.
ancient instruments that don't
Yes.
exist. And he said, oh, I like to walk outside. Like that's it. Like,
Wow.
yeah. And
Because first of all, their costumes, how they come out dressed up, how they bring other people onto stage and the rituals that they're doing on stage. That was like the most amazing magical experience I've ever encountered in a concert.
mhm.
My husband and I went to that concert.
Yeah, it's supposed to be amazing. I've seen like YouTube videos, but I have not been to
Hmm.
a concert.
Oh, it's amazing. It really is amazing. Yeah, if anybody here in the chat, if you guys have an opportunity to go to their concert, I highly recommend it. And their music's phenomenal. I use their music when I'm going into ritual or performing stuff
Yeah.
because it puts you in that mood and that mindset and that frequency that you're picking up from the music. You're actually building up your own energy to perform these types of rituals. So I do use their music for rituals.
Right. And so yeah, that's coming back to your original question about like why that is, like why people get that kind of energy in groups. Again, in part because of the music,
Mhm.
because of the vibrations, because of the like the bass line and the and that's moving through our bodies along with sharing energy. So I think that, and it's fun. People want to go to concerts because it's fun. So
Yeah.
naturally, they're going to be like excited, and that helps them with the high energy. And
Yeah.
so it's all of those combination of things that create that create that shared energy that feels so amazing. And I think about things like, um, oh, what is it called? It's in Black Rock City, that summer event, um, that like people just go out in the desert.
Um, um, not Iron, no, something Man, something.
Oh, Burning, not Burning Man. Burning
Is
Man?
it Burning Man?
Burning Man.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So like people, they go to this thing. It's a week long, right?
Yeah.
And it's harsh conditions and everything.
Yes.
And when they come back, they can't describe it. They're like, it was the energy was something I will never experience outside of that or feel. Burning Man. Yeah. Thank
Hmm.
you. And so I think that it's sort of the same in a concert. Like you're in this moment in time, you have this shared experience with all of these people, and then it goes away, it dissipates as everybody it's done and everybody leaves. And I think that that's why it's really hard to explain those kinds of experiences, because there's a ritual to going to a concert, right? There's a
Hmm.
ritual with the way a
I mean,
concert.
I painted my face. I had runes and sigils and everything. And
Yeah.
yeah, I did that.
And that, people do that at sporting events, and they talk
Hmm.
about like, oh, this was an amazing game. And it's not just the excitement, it's all of the music that's booming, and
Yeah.
it's everybody else is there, and there's rivalry and all of those things. So it's these shared experiences that we have that almost become the ritual in and of itself.
Ah, beautiful. So, do you think liminal spaces change our perceptive of reality in the same way?
Yeah, I think liminal spaces are interesting. Well, some liminal spaces, not all of them. And there's a couple of different kinds. And I think that when you're talking about the concept, the symbolism, you think about liminality in your life when you walk through a doorway or down a hall.
Hmm.
But there are some places, and there was a term that was coined in the early 90s called non-places. And these places are places like airports and hotels, even when you're commuting. And in
Oh,
those places, you are performing a very specific role. I'm in an airport, I am a traveler, right?
yeah,
I might get
yeah,
something to eat, I might have a drink. I'm on a plane, I'm a traveler.
yeah.
And so that is the role. So it's not like a real place to you. It's something that you have to get through. So you're not at home anymore, and you are not yet at your destination. And
You're in
so,
between.
right. And so you stay in this liminal space. And I think that it's really interesting because people they take on that role, right? They take it on gladly, and they, are like, this is who I am right now. And so, but that being said, airports, any hotels, they're not liminal spaces for everybody. There are people who work there. They go to their kiosk every day. That's
Hmm.
their real life. They don't have a role. I mean, they have a job, but
Yeah.
it's not a role outside of being who they are. And so when you look at those two ways to be, like, of course, it changes what we're thinking. And I think spaces that are even further out of our normal experience, an abandoned school, or I don't know if you remember the back rooms, that phenomena online where it's just like people wandering around in this abandoned,
Hmm.
yeah. And so those, I think, even more because they feel creepy to us because they're not functioning the way that they were designed to function. And
Yeah.
so that affects the way we think about those spaces.
So, what type of magic would you want to do in those types of spaces, in those liminal, like airport, those back rooms? Even I feel like it's almost like a ghost town as well, because at one time it was bustling, it was moving, it was a real functioning town, and now there's nothing there but old abandoned buildings.
Yeah, I think the Backrooms is really interesting because I want to say it's a games shop right now. It's like the basement of games shop. because the original was really a real place, and it was just empty at that time. And it's
Yeah.
in Wisconsin, I think. It's in like
Or
southern.
like old blockbusters that are still maybe just there open. Now we have like the old, what is it, CVS maybe, where
Mhm.
the buildings are now abandoned and just sitting there. And at one time were a pharmacy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of exploring abandoned places. I love it. I don't know that I would do much magic in some place like an airport,
Hmm.
unless it was just sort of, internal.
Mental. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I were going to do some sort of magic, it would be about understanding some sort of liminality in my life, because being in a liminal space or a liminal time of your life is uncomfortable. We humans like structure. We like things to be how they're supposed to be. And so if you're in, say, menopause, right, it's like,
Hmm.
it's physically not great, but it's like I want to be on the other side. I don't want to be in this passage anymore. So to sort of try and help me ease those kind of liminal spaces. And I'm a huge fan in my spell work of using symbolism. So,
Hmm.
what does it mean to you? And if people are passing, right? They're not in their regular life, they're in hospice, but they're not yet gone.
Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
do magic for those kinds of situations. So again, I like to use whatever it is that is available to me and that fits the situation.
Oh, lovely. I love that. So now we're going to switch over into your folklore practice. So, as someone deeply involved in folklore research, how do you see folklore shaping modern magic practice?
Well, as I was saying earlier about the Wheel of the Year, I think
Hmm.
that, the folklore this is ancient magic. And in a way, it's sort of true, but like the stuff that is based on older
Yeah.
magic is about the seasons, right? It's,
Yeah.
harvest time, it's first bloom, it's, growth season. And
Hmm.
so when you're celebrating those, they tie to the earth. And in a different way than when you're in the southern hemisphere, but still, it all ties to the seasons. And so I think that, like, the stories we tell about those things, there are people out there believing that, this was these ancient traditions. We don't know how ancient traditions worked. We just do not. And so, again, it's all made up. Somebody made it up.
Yeah.
And I think that also, when you start to get into these conversations about, oh, I'm a generational witch, so my magic is stronger. And there are
Than
people,
yours. Yeah.
yeah, and, it's like, okay, so first of all, it wasn't always safe to practice any kind of magic or herbalism or anything like
Yeah.
that. It's been dangerous a lot, and it's still dangerous in a lot of places. And so your family wasn't talking about that. Like, there's no way
Mine
to,
didn't.
yeah. And they would keep their practice a secret, and they would
Hmm.
do their thing, or people would, sneak up to their doors in the dead of night, and people were not talking about it for a
No.
lot of time. So to say, like, I've got generations, no, you don't know that. Maybe you do, I don't know. But the other thing is, I'm so like sick of spiritual gatekeeping and magical
Me
gate.
too. And you mentioned gatekeeping in this book. That's like the first word in that chapter.
And it's like, to me, when people are like, there's a right way to do your magic, it's like, no, of course not. But people are really adamant about that. And I'm like, so what you're telling me is you're really insecure about your own magic.
Yeah.
You know?
So, my co-host Bobby from Wild Raven Tarot, we talk about magic and this type of topic all the time on our channel every Thursday, and we do talk about the gatekeeping. And for me, I've always told people, do what feels right to you.
Yep.
Use your intuition. Everybody has it. You just need to know how to use it. But do what's right for you, what feels right for you, and don't let anyone tell you you're doing it wrong. If they do, you can send them our way and we'll have a little chat with them. Because I heavily dislike gatekeepers.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that, some people are well intentioned with it and they really strongly believe what they're saying. But if you look at how we are connected to nature, we're connected vibrationally, we're connected to energy. It's like, yeah, in order to, like, be a generational witch, you have to be human. Like,
Yeah,
we're connected to all of these things. And
we all are.
yeah, some people are more sensitive. It's very true. But that's like saying, because, some famous basketball player was, 3 generations back, that I'm going to be fantastic at basketball. We don't, because we have to consider our genetics, right? There
Hmm.
is genetic material that passes down through the generations. So we get those genetics. And
Yeah.
that, again, is a real thing. So maybe you have more natural talent because of your genetics, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that you will, because you may have beliefs that were handed to you in childhood that are having you tell stories about your abilities that aren't true. And you can't do what you don't believe is possible. That
Yes. Yeah.
we
You
we
can't
know
do
this.
what you don't believe is possible. That's nicely said. Yeah, you can't.
Well, we know this, and I don't know why I'm using so many sports references today. I'm not a sporty person at all. I've never been a sporty person. I don't even like to run.
Me either.
But there was a point in time in the 40s where people believed, they did a bunch of testing on the human body, and they tried to figure out, and they came up with a certain amount of time that a human body would never be able to run faster than. And that was the 4-minute mile. They said nobody can break the 4-minute mile until somebody did, right?
Yeah.
And it was like astonishing. And there's, oh, he's special, or he's got some, physical features. Well, then in the couple of years after that, people broke it again and again and again, because they finally believed they could.
Yes. It's your mindset. I feel like you can do anything you put your mind to, even if it is breaking that 4-minute mile. There's many sports analogies where people didn't think that they could do it. I mean, look at the Jamaican bobsled team.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one thought they could because they had absolutely zero snow where they're at in Jamaica, but they did.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think if you put your mind to it, I think you can actually create anything. And that's what I tell my kids is mind over matter. Think about, be cautious on what you think about and how you think about it. Be cautious on what you say about yourself negatively,
Yep.
because you're going to start to believe it. And
Yeah.
that's the worst thing you could ever do to yourself is tell yourself, I'm not magical enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not bright enough. Any of those things.
Yeah. I mean, just because somebody's telling a story about you doesn't mean it's true, even if you're the one doing the storytelling.
Exactly that. Very true. Very true. So, do you think folklore preserves wisdom that modern culture sometimes overlooks?
Absolutely. I think that, part of the reason why I wanted to do folkloring is that these practices connect you to the land around you,
Mhm.
to your ancestors, to your community. They are ways in which you can connect your life. And part of modern living is convincing us, number one, that we are sort of isolated silos. And that is obviously not true. We know that.
Mhm.
But it also, we forget some of those more ancient practices. I loved when everybody wanted to do sourdough bread during the lockdown, and everybody
And
was,
everyone's still doing it.
I'm still doing it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I couldn't, I probably, okay. I probably could make it. I'm just saying I just couldn't. And here I am telling myself, don't say you can't do it. I probably could. I just don't have the patience for it.
It doesn't take all that much time. It takes a little to learn about hydration level.
Okay.
Because that's when it, like, if it's too hydrated, like the water is in too high of a concentration compared to the flour, it gets dense and wet in the middle, and it doesn't,
Yeah. Because that's my favorite type of bread is sourdough.
yeah. There's techniques to it,
Yeah.
but it was fun to learn those techniques. And
Yeah.
so it's like, now I know what overproofing is, and I don't do that. I know how to not do that. I know how to feed my starter. And I wasn't doing it right for a long time, because when I originally learned it, it was like a 1 to 1 to 1. So equal amounts of starter, flour, water. And that doesn't make a really strong starter after a while. And so, and I learned what hooch is.
Oh,
So I learned a lot of things that, people developed these methods because it was what they had available to them, right? Sourdough yeast, you can generate on your own. Like you can generate it at home. You don't need somebody else's starter because you can do a starter all by yourself. And just knowing that, I have never done a starter from scratch, but I know that you can. And so people used the yeast substitute that they had available to them. They used those natural yeasts that are in the air all around us, and anybody can do that. And you had to make do. You weren't driving down to the supermarket to get some sourdough starter, right?
no, not at all, because everything was on lockdown.
So yeah, from a folkloric perspective and a folk practice and a traditional skills kind of perspective, I think that it really does affect who we are. Because most people think about folklore, we talked about this earlier, as old stories. And that's not all it is. It's really, again, those rituals. If we're going to, there's a lot more stuff. I work with a lot of people in the UK, and they like have a lot of festivals, and they're traditional festivals.
Yeah.
I actually researched a book that a friend of mine wrote about, like, Britain's Folklore Year is the name of it. And so I did all the research for it, and the festivals are amazing, and they're weird and they're wild, and they're
like the Krampus festivals.
Yeah. And they've been going on for some of them hundreds of years. And so I think that those remind us that we are sharing a culture. Because, folklore, at its essence, folklore is either a practice, a tradition, a belief, or a story shared amongst a group of people, right? And so a lot of stuff falls into that. Superstitions fall into that.
Yeah.
And again, one of those magical things that most of us think is pretty normal, right? It could be a family in-joke, right? A family story. It could be, I was talking to someone about this a while back, and their thing on Christmas Eve was to drive around and look at the lights while the father told scary stories. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's their tradition. And so I think that folklore affects us all on personal levels. We just, again, we don't notice it as much.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So you also identify yourself as an animist. How does that worldview influence your relationship with nature and energy?
I think that being an animist, and the way that I define it is that I think that all living beings have spirit or soul or whatever we use for that, right? And so it makes me much more open, I think, to all of these things we've been talking about connecting with nature, connecting with the land, and even the earth itself has a vibrational frequency. It's not just, the living plants and stuff. And again, it's measurable. We know what it is. Yeah. So I think that it just made me so much more open to connecting on that vibrational level and tapping into, we talked about the morphic resonance field, and tapping into that field, because it's not a big leap for me to, like, I have a relationship with my cat. It's not a big leap for me to think I can have a relationship with plants or with my deities or with the earth itself.
Yeah.
And, if I want to define that as land spirits, that's just the way that I'm looking at it. But it's where the science and the magic come together is always where I want to be.
I definitely consider myself an animist because I do see the spirit in absolutely everything. I mean, I talked to the plants when one was having a bad day. She looked very sad. And I talked to her, gave her some water. and continued to nurture her and talk to her every day until all of a sudden I started seeing, new plants, new sprouts coming through. So to me, I saw that as it was working. Me talking to that plant and helping nourish it and helping it, get through that sad process, that, sad stage it was in, it actually helped.
Yeah, I used to have a peace lily that died not too long ago, and I was really bummed about it. And so I was looking up different things, and it was like talking about the lifespan of your average peace lily. What it said is it's 3 to 5 years. I had had that peace lily for 32 years.
Wow. So it really went way above and beyond its life. That's amazing.
And it was funny because I wasn't really like, I'm a little bit of a careless gardener. Like, I'm like, oh, I really got to water.
Me too. That's why they get so sad at me, because I forget about them and I'm like, oh my goodness, their leaves are turning brown. Let me give you some water. And then I'll overwater and I'm like, oh. So then I completely drown them out. But I'm
Right.
the same way. I'm a careless gardener. Like I don't really have much of a green thumb for being a witch.
Yeah. So I think that, connecting that way is really how my belief system affects my magic practice, my folkloring, all of it.
Yeah. So my sister had a plant that she had given me and it had like thorns and stuff on it. And I'm like, ooh, can I have that? Because I want the thorns for protective magic. So she cut off a piece. It was already dry. I had it sitting in a jar, completely forgot about it. I put it like I wanted to really dry it up and completely forgot about it. Like a year later, I find it. Can you believe it went from being brown to being green again, and a first flower came through on it? I
Wow.
had never watered it, never, no soil, no nothing. It was just in a little mason jar and a flower came out of it. And I'm like, what in the world just happened?
I think that one of my favorite plants in the entire world is the Rose of Jericho.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so cool. Like any
Yeah.
time that I like, I've
Bring it out.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it's just like I'm like that
Do
just
you use that water for anything after you go back to drying it up again?
sometimes I'll use it for spell work,
Yeah. Me too. Me
because
too.
that rebirth is such a powerful kind of symbolic energy.
Yeah, I love doing mine on the new year because to me it's my symbology of just coming back alive again. So
Mhm.
I only do it once a year. I don't do it more than that because of the mold issue that you can get from it. If you
Yeah,
overdo it or have it in water for too long and don't let it dry up properly. That's such a weird plant.
yeah. Well, for me specifically, so I hate air conditioning. I use my air conditioning 2 or 3 days a year. Like I hate it.
Mhm.
And I only do it when it's so humid because I'm right next to Lake Michigan that it's just like I can't, everything feels uncomfortable. And I do it to like pull the moisture out of the air. So it's often that it's damp, or like humid in here
Yeah.
because I'll leave the windows open all summer long. My neighbors think I'm so weird.
That's okay. I love that. So, I mean, I used to live on Lake Erie, so it was the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I lived up in Cleveland, by Cleveland, Ohio, so the same thing. So what does everyday magic look like for you now in your personal practice?
Well, every day I do grounding, centering, shielding.
Mhm.
A very specific practice. It takes me a few minutes to do it. I also do it if I feel off or I've been around some
Mhm.
bad energy, whatever. I put out offerings on my deity altar. I often light candles on my kitchen altar when I'm cooking. And what else? So I do something called pore breathing, like your pores. And it's a
Mm.
meditation. It's by a guy named Franz Barton. And you sort of imagine that when you breathe in, you're breathing in through all of your pores.
Oh.
And there's a couple of different kinds. You can do an air, a fire, a water, or an earth. And so you imagine
Mm.
yourself surrounded by those things and you're breathing it all in as you breathe in. The other
Wow.
way you can do that is with a specific intention. And so if you want to, I want my business to be successful, you can focus on that core breathing while you're focusing on that core thought. I'm also doing something called depth point every day, which is sort of project yourself inside an object. And it's like you feel what it feels like to be inside that object. And obviously these are all meditations. And so that's kind of, I said I'd leave offerings, right? Yeah, I did say that. That's what I do on the day-to-day. Sometimes I leave an offering up on this is my altar for my ancestors. And a couple of months ago, we were doing ritual together, and it was an ancestor ritual. And so we were sort of doing readings back and forth for each other. And one of the people in my circle said, Tracy, for you, I am seeing an ancestor come forward. And he's an older man, and he's got sort of a beard, a gray kind of grizzled beard, and he was a storyteller. And I am sensing that you need to leave an offering for him tonight. And I love storytelling. I've taken storytelling classes. I love folklore. And so I sort of started putting out offerings to him every once in a while, and to the ancestors in general. I don't do that every day, though.
Yeah. See, I do that every day, being Mexican, and we're big on Day of the Dead, ancestors. I have a permanent ancestral altar as well. And every morning I make coffee for them. I set coffee out for my deities. And, that's my morning routine with them, is having coffee, letting them know what I'm doing throughout the day, if I'm going to need their assistance, and sharing a cup of coffee together.
Yeah, I think that it's important, if you're going to work with either deities or ancestors or angels, whatever you call them, right? It's important to maintain that relationship. And because, you don't want to just walk up to someone on the street and be like, hey, I need a favor, And,
True.
And so you want to develop that relationship. And, again, as a folklorist, to me, it doesn't matter whether these things are true or not. As a practitioner, but as a folklorist, it doesn't. It matters what people believe and why they believe it. And so, if that's what moves your practice forward and makes you feel more connected, I mean, that's great,
Yeah. Yeah, I like my co-host here said, he loves it as well. So yeah, that's definitely something I do on a daily basis. That's part of my daily practice as well, is acknowledging those that were before me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do that when we're doing ritual. We work with Frau Hulda, Tubal Cain, the young prince, which is Lucifer, and the witch ancestors. And we call them in every time. We greet them, we welcome them, we thank them at the end. And we use that symbolism. We talk about, those that come before us. And when we talk now, we talk about those who know how to fight, help us, give us your strength at this terrible time, right? And because we need to be out there fighting. And we talk about Frau Hulda as she of the face of fair and foul. And we talk about finding that balance. And when, in the winter, when it's the foul, it's we need strength at that time. And so we use that symbolism of who they are to connect it to that particular spell that we're trying to do in that moment.
So I do a lot of past life work, and I've uncovered 16 witchy past lives, or witch past lives. So when I'm doing ritual, I call them in, as well as my ancestors and my deities, to help me with my rituals, with my spells that I'm performing. If there's one of them that has a specific ability that I know she had from my deep meditations and regressions and stuff that I went into, I will call on her specifically to help me, conquer that, or to teach me how to do it.
Absolutely. That's really interesting stuff. I've only done it a couple of times. And so, and I was very mundane and ordinary in all of the lives. But I always find it interesting because when I do that, I see aspects of myself. Like, I've kind of historically been a people pleaser and that kind of thing. And I feel like, I need to be offering more to people to like be in my life. And there was a lifetime that absolutely showed why that would be true about me. So,
Interesting.
yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, part of what morphic resonance teaches us is that it's a little different than like the magnetic fields or the gravity field or the electromagnetic field, right? Basically, the theory about it is, as these fields, these vibrational fields are happening and hitting us, they learn over time. And so they bring knowledge forward. And it's one of the reasons why we, like, when inventions happen, they often happen at multiple places around the earth. It's because of this morphic field. And again, back to the genetics. So, why aren't we getting, like, everybody's thinking all the time, right? So why aren't we getting like ideas and information, like just like a fire hose all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to our genetics and our, past,
Yeah.
who we were in past lives as well. And it's about, like, so you have the signal, all these signals coming through, and say you want to, download or watch a video, right? So you go, it matters whether you have electricity. It matters whether you have a connection to the internet. It matters what your browser is and what your equipment is. Is it a phone? And then it matters what site you go to, right? All of that matters in what information comes through. And that's why we get these, because the equipment and all of that, that's our genetics, right? And all of this stuff is what leads us to being able to filter out the right messages for us. And, if that's going to your past lives as well, I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah. I love that. I love doing past life work. To me, it's always fascinating to do it for other people as well. And then they come back and say, something happened and I saw how this really resonated with that past life. So it's really a cool thing. Here, my friend here, my little quantum heart is singing hallelujah. I mean, praising these concepts all the time. She does. She really does talk about like here her toroidal realities. She's always talking quantum physics and witchcraft on her channel, and I love her for that. She really makes my mind go into a whole different space by listening to what she's saying and where her theories are going, because it really does open up. So when I was reviewing this book, I referred to her a couple times because I was like, okay, Amber, this is definitely your type. This is 100% your type of book. It's mine too, but hers even more because of science and the quantum aspect of it. So I love you, Amber. You're amazing. You're amazing. So if a complete skeptic picked up Mind Over Magic, someone who believes there is absolutely no such thing as magic, what do you hope they might reconsider by the end of this book?
Well, I hope that they would see that some of the things that we used to consider to be magic are now scientifically proven fact. And that they might say, hey, maybe there are other parts of magic that can be proven at some point, and we just don't know yet. And so to open up that curiosity and inquisitiveness, and because, 20, 30 years ago, we were really just talking about these things like they were magic. And people were like, oh, tree hugger and all of that. It's like, well, you could.
I am a tree hugger.
Yeah. Go hug the trees,
Yes,
wear
I
long
do.
sleeves, but go hug the trees.
I talk to them and everything.
And so it is a mindset. And if I'm going to define magic, I'm going to say that it is changing the environment, either within you or around you, with no mechanical means, right? Just like the placebo. And so I think that if you look at it from that perspective, and you can start to say, what things have I normalized? that fit that description, and what things are so fantastical that they don't fit that description.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So we're down to our last question. People in the chat, if y'all have any questions for Tracy, please go ahead. Speak now or forever hold your peace. But my final question for you, Tracy, is if humanity lost every magical tradition tomorrow, what do you think would still remain?
I think that we would still have all of the things that are physically out there, whether we understand them or not.
Yeah,
Those would all
yeah,
still be true. And I think that if you get rid of folklore and magic and the stories we tell about magic, there'll be a massive void. And people will start telling those stories again. And they're going to tell them from a personal perspective. And they're going to say, my mother did this, or this is
mhm,
how, I was taught to do this. And so those stories will come back. And I think they'll come back very quickly.
strong. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's sort of the way that folklore has worked over time, because back in the day, there used to be individual storytellers. People would tell stories either within their community or they would travel around and tell it. So there were lots of different versions of these stories. And then we got folklorists.
mhm,
And they started writing down the stories. The
yeah,
problem with that is they were writing it down from a white male European, mostly male European perspective.
perspective.
And so they focused on certain things that, again, they were filtering it through their lived experience. And
Mhm,
so the Grimm brothers
yeah.
and Anderson got to be experts. And that's then the way the story was. It was the official story. And it got even worse with Disney, right?
Oh my
Because,
goodness.
yeah, then we had the sanitized official version. And what has happened with the internet, which I love so much, is that we're starting to tell stories to each other again. And we're starting to tell personal versions of the stories. And so when we connect that way and say, hey, I tried this spell and here's what happened,
Yeah,
that's a story about magic. And
yeah,
people love stories. And like I said, they tell stories about things that are important to them. And so we don't function without stories. Stories are how we learn. Stories are how we connect. Stories are how we share our experiences and make sense of them. So the stories would come back immediately. It just wouldn't be the sort of tradition official version. Here's how you do this spell. Here's what you have to do. You have to do this ritual. Those would go away and we'd start recreating them for ourselves. And it would be this beautiful, like all of these different practices happening, and we would be talking about them.
yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. There's something powerful about the way you bring folklore into the lived experience, not as something distant or historical, but something as that we can actually practice, feel, and carry with us. And I think everyone watching today or in the future, I feel like if something in this conversation resonated with you, I highly encourage you to explore Tracy's work, as well as her podcast, Folkloring, and the way she continues to bridge creativity, nature, story. I think it just really wonderful how all of this really does show up in our life. I think it's such a magic itself is in our daily life.
Well, I thank you very much for having me on. This has been a really interesting conversation. If anybody wants to continue the conversation, I do have a community in school, which is a platform. It's spelled SKOOL. And if you go there, you'll find me at Folkloring Life. And if you want to jump in and we can continue to talk about this thing, it's very much a community. It's not me just providing content. We actually talk about magic in your life and we talk about folkloring topics. And so, come find me there if you want to keep talking.
Wonderful. I actually just found it, so I'm going to post that in the chat here, so people can. There it is.
And if anybody wants a signed copy of the book, I do ship them out from my website, which is folkloringlife.com. So you can find the book, all of my reviews, all of the other podcasts I've been on. And yeah, let's keep talking. Let's make some magic together.
Definitely. So Folkloring Life is your website, correct?
Yes, that is my
Okay.
main hub.
Okay, I will add those all into the description down below for anybody looking it up. There we go. Okay.
And my community is private, so if you aren't out of the broom closet, the random general person won't be able to find out what we're talking about in there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you once again, Tracy, for being here. I truly appreciate all the knowledge and information you brought into this amazing book. Anybody in the chat, I did pin how to purchase this book. It's also in the description down below. So either if you go to Crosscrow Books, or if you want to find something, or if you shop on Amazon and that's where you find it, that's where you find your magical books, that's also fine as well. You can, it doesn't matter where you get it as long as you get it. I think this is a phenomenal book. Amber, for sure, you need this book. I think you would completely love it, and it'll make your quantum heart jump even more. So
Yeah, and you can find it in bookstores too. I don't think it doesn't come out in the UK and Europe until like the middle of next month, but it should be
Okay.
in bookstores in the US.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody in the chat for being here. I appreciate you sharing your energy with us and your chatting abilities through the chat. I appreciate you guys so very much. And Tracy, if you can stay with me for a couple minutes after the end of the live stream so we can chat for a moment. So thank you all once again. Here she goes. Hey, Kat. Thanks for coming on, Tracy. I love you, Amber. Okay, guys, I will see you all on the next live.